Welcome to our Sound for Video help session for the 22nd of December, 2015. Today, we are going to cover whatever questions you might have, and we're also going to take a look at managing audio, editing audio in Premiere Pro. So I'm using the latest version of Premiere Pro. This is the 2015.1 release. So those that are um, subscribers to the Adobe Creative Cloud, you have access to this version. For those of you that have older versions, I think most, not all, but most of what we're going to talk about tonight or today, depending on where you're at, is also applicable. So no fears there. No questions have come in yet, so I think we're going to go ahead and dive straight into Premiere and take a look at a few things here. Now, please, again, if you do have questions, head on over to the Google Plus page where you can watch this event live and where you can submit your questions, and those will show up in the question and answer panel right here. So, well, looking forward to any questions you might have. So let's go ahead and jump into Premiere Pro. Share that. Okay. Excellent. All right. Again, as I said, Premiere Pro 2015.1 release here. This is just what I want to run through is a couple of things related to audio in particular. What I have here is a short sequence with just a couple of clips here. And then, so I have a kind of an intro. This is actually for my Tascam DR701D review, which I did a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it was last week. So I have sort of an intro here where I'm introducing this episode. I have a little bumper here, and we'd put a title here, and then we jump into the episode here where I do an audio test. So these are the raw. This is the raw footage straight out of the camera, and it's already been synced up to the audio. So I've already taken care of that. If you're not familiar with how to do that, you can see that in the course if you're taking the course, or if not, if you go take a look at my channel, do a search on the channel over at YouTube. We have at least 2 different episodes that talk about syncing audio. Actually 3 now. We have 1 for Final Cut Pro 10 and 2 for Premiere. So you can definitely find out how to do that. But I don't want to focus so much on that, but let me just play for, well, actually, you can't hear it. But what I can do is I'm going to have to kind of walk you through this. I made another shot at trying to figure out how to play this on a Google Hangout, the computer audio, and I haven't figured that out yet. But in any case, this dialogue here is just not all that loud yet. So let me show you here, for example, if I take this over into Adobe Audition, and let me just make sure we're sharing that as well. Stop sharing that one and start sharing this one. And in fact, what I'm going to do, just to make this easier, is we're going to go ahead and share this my whole desktop. Entire screen, share. Okay. All right, so here we are in Adobe Audition. This is the audio clip, and you can see here, not all that loud. The peaks are this loudest transient here goes up to maybe minus 6.5. But I'd say the majority of the peaks are around minus 10, minus 12 in that area. And so if we run the amplitude statistics on this, we can see loudness wise, this is sitting at minus 28.83 LUFS. So again, for distribution on the web, I typically like to get that up to, for a mono file, minus 19 LUFS approximately. Or if it's a stereo file or a dual mono file, I like to get that up to minus 16 LUFS or somewhere thereabouts. So this is way too quiet right now. So what are our options for managing that? And actually, let me just quit this, come back into Premiere. So before we do anything there is a new feature in the newest version of Premiere that does loudness normalization for us. We're going to come back to that in a minute, but that's one of the challenges here and one of the things I'm going to need to fix. Now, are there other ways you could do that? Certainly, you could come into your effects library here. There are a bunch of audio effects. Not everything that you have in Audition is here, but most of it's here. And for example, I could use this same single band compressor here, and I could do some compression. The fiddly thing about this, or the thing that makes this difficult in Premiere, is that I don't really have a scale here, so I don't really know where I'm at. So I don't know how to set my threshold necessarily. I could just kind of take a shot in the dark, but that doesn't work very well, to be honest. So we're going to kind of skip that for now. And that, in fact, if I can be so bold as to suggest that. That's typically why I don't do most of my audio processing in here, but nevertheless, there are some things you can do. And if you do have a quick turnaround, you may not have the luxury of actually round tripping to Audition and bringing it back. Nevertheless, for the record, it's pretty straightforward. You can actually send the entire sequence audio to Audition all in one shot, I believe, here. So, for example, if I come back over here and choose my sequence, and then I believe I can do edit in Adobe Audition sequence, and that'll send the entire sequence over, and we can edit that. However, if you are in a situation where we're going to be here, and let me just show you here, I have this sound or this music track that I want to drop in here as sort of my intro music. And before I do that, actually, let me get that out of there. One thing that I typically do here is I will open this over here first, and I'll play through it and actually place some markers in it. And the reason I place the markers there is that those are downbeats. And a lot of times, for example, when this bumper starts, I want to start it on a downbeat in the music. So I'm going to fade it. It's going to be faded here, ducked underneath the dialogue here. Then we'll bring it up and we'll hit a downbeat right as the bumper starts. And that works pretty effectively. And you can do that for all sorts of situations where you want to kind of emphasize visual things with audible things as well, or with music. So I go ahead and place these markers in here, and all that involves is I just play through it. Whoops. And while it's playing, I can actually just press the M key on the keyboard to drop a marker. So this was a downbeat here, and this was another downbeat here. So what that means in practical terms is then when I pull that over here onto the timeline, I actually have those markers here. And what's more is they help me kind of line it up perfectly. So again, I said I wanted to get that downbeat right here on the start. So that's how I get the downbeat. I just drag it and it actually gets sticky. And you see that little marker there, that thing that pops up? That's telling me, hey, your marker's right here. It's lining up with this, which is perfect. That's where I want. And then I can just drag this out. Now, there are some other issues here. First of all, and we'll come back to this, you can see the audio for the music clearly looks louder than the audio for the dialogue. So we're going to have to kind of even those up at some point, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. However, first, what I want to do is I want to duck all of this part of the music so that it's beneath the dialogue, underneath the dialogue, sitting in the background, not distracting too much, but kind of, maintaining the energy of the piece here. So the way I do that here is I can actually use keyframes, and I'll place my marker here. So when I hit this downbeat here, I'm going to drop a marker or a keyframe there. I want it to be pretty much at full volume there. However, I need to fade into the full volume. So I'll pull the marker or the playhead back a little bit, drop another keyframe, and then do another one a little farther back, drop another keyframe, and then I'll go to the start here and drop one final keyframe. So I want to completely fade this one out to minus infinity. This one I'll probably drop down to somewhere in about like the minus 40 range. And then I'll use this one to kind of gradually fade up, or fade in. And we do that pretty aggressively here near the end, but a little bit more smoothly between this one. So that'll help me fade in. And as soon as we hit the bumper here, then we'll hear that downbeat at full volume and we'll hear the song. Then I do the opposite over on this end here. Can I drop another keyframe right there? Another one that goes pretty quickly after that so that it's kind of already well on its way out of the way as soon as the dialogue starts. And then have another one over here to fade us out. And then I'm actually not going to take it this far. Let's have it fade out by about here. So I'm actually going to get my cutting tool here, cut the audio right there, get rid of this other part here. And then we're going to go ahead and drop another keyframe here at the very end. And again, pull that down to minus infinity. This one will pull down to, again, about minus 40. Oops. It gets a little fiddly here near the end. And again, we'll do that same thing where between the first, or these two keyframes will be pretty aggressively quick down, and then we'll kind of fade down a little bit more smoothly and then fade all the way out to minus infinity by the end. So that's how I typically will use the keyframes to duck audio. So let's talk a little bit about this new loudness normalization feature in Premiere Pro. So that's just one example of some of the the types of things that you can do. Very, very flexible here using these keyframes and being able to really kind of sculpt the audio and make it do exactly what you want it to do. Now, one of the other things I'll typically do with the audio here as well is let's just cut right there. I'm going to put another cut right there. So now I have 3 different audio clips for the song. I'm not going to move them or anything, but what I do want to do is I want to take this one and I want to drop an EQ effect on there. Let's see. I think we're going to look for parametric EQ. Do we have that one in here? You can see I don't typically do this in here, but yeah, we do have the parametric EQ. So we'll drop it on the header here and also on the tail. And then if I come over here, let's go up into the effect controls. So now I have this parametric EQ. I want to put the center here about 1000 hertz. And let's see, we'll make the Q, just leave the Q at its default. And then we're going to drop this by about 4 dB. Now, let me explain what I'm doing here and the reason I do this. And actually, let me show it to you visually so it makes more sense. I'm going to go ahead, you can use the parametric EQ, but let me show you with a more sophisticated EQ plugin that does not come with Premiere, but at least allows us to kind of visually show you what's going on here. I'm going to use the Ozone 6 equalizer. Drop that on here. Okay. All right. Now we will get a visual representation of what we're doing here. So I actually have this preset that I made, and this makes it a lot faster for me when I'm editing and I need to quickly EQ some music so that it can sit behind dialogue audio. So I just click this preset and then I'll explain what I'm doing here. So here is the audio spectrum represented graphically. So over here we have our bass sounds. This is 0 hertz over here all the way up to 20,000 hertz over here, or 20 kilohertz over here. And dialogue actually typically sits somewhere in the, the 1.5 kilohertz to, the 1 kilohertz to 1.5 kilohertz. And what I've done here is I've just scooped out that area by 4 dB, and I've made a pretty wide scoop here. And what I'm doing here is I'm cutting all of this frequency from the music so that there's plenty of room for the dialogue in this area here, so that the music and the dialogue don't compete so much. I can still have the music there, and the listener can still hear it and still, kind of feel that energy, but it's not getting in the way of the dialogue, and the dialogue is very easy to understand. So that's kind of a nice trick if you haven't seen that one before, as far as setting some music behind dialogue. That's pretty helpful. So you can do that again. You can do that with the parametric EQ that comes with Premiere. I just wanted to show you that graphically so you could see what that looked like. And in fact, let me just drop that one here as well. Actually, let me do it in the parametric EQ instead, just so you can see. Again, we want to be, let's go 1500 hertz, which is 1.5 kilohertz, same thing. Then we will go -4 dB here. And that should accomplish the same thing for us. So, all right. Good. Okay. So that takes care of that issue. Now, the one issue we have left is that the music is a lot louder than the dialogue. In fact, it's overwhelming. If I could play it back for you here, it's a funny face there. What you would find is that the dialogue is really, really, really quiet. And then suddenly the music comes in and it's overwhelming. So that doesn't work so well, obviously. So what we want to do here is actually take these 3 here, and I want to pull these back some. So overall, I want to get this, and this is frankly, this is a hacky method of doing this. It's not probably the best way to do this, but let me show you how we do that here. So once I've selected this clip and I have the playhead over it between this keyframe and this keyframe, this is the area I want to pull it back some. Then I can come up here to my audio clip mixer, and that gives me the opportunity to use this this fader here. So we're on audio track 2 right here, and it appears Okay, there we go. Yeah, you can see, okay, the fader is at 0 right now. So if I wanted to pull that, if I pull that back by about 8 dB, that'll get it a lot closer to the dialogue here. So let's go ahead and do that. So if I pull that down to -8 dB, you can see the line suddenly went down. I'll do the same thing on these other two. And in fact, I could have done this before I sliced them up and added the EQ, and that would have made it easier. But let's do this here. Okay, so I need to pull that down by 8 dB. And you can see it actually probably makes sense if you're going to be in the situation you want to do all this first. But see, we're at minus 5.5. So let's add 8 to that. 8 and 5 is 13. So we're going to go minus 13.5. It's about right in this range here. Good. Then on this one, we'll also go down some. And on this one, we'll go down a bunch as well. So you can get the idea there. You can actually also grab these individually and just sort of move them around a little bit. But this one, I need this one to match up with that. So there we go. And it actually is probably way faster just to grab these keyframes and do this kind of gig instead. Okay, so there we go. So that's pulled it back. Now let's show you how to do the loudness normalization. So what we've done so far, number of things. We brought in the music bed, what we're going to call the music bed in this case. We want the music to sit behind the dialogue when there's dialogue, like in this talking head piece. We also want it to sit behind the main body of our piece. So here's when we get started on the episode and actually start talking about things. However, we want it to be up front and center. So we applied the EQ scoop to the dialogue parts. So we have those EQ filter or effects here and here, but we did not apply it here because again, there's no dialogue here. We just want the music to be front and center. We did pull it back quite a bit so that it would be in the same overall mix level as the dialogue, so that when we do the loudness normalization at the end, it'll bring them all up so that they're all in the same realm. And let's go ahead and do that. So I have my sequence selected here. I come to File and choose Export Media. And this is a dialogue that, for those of you that edit in Premiere, you're very familiar with, I think. And I'm not going to run through all of the settings that you'd typically want to use in terms of exporting your video and when you'd want to do what. But let's just show you the loudness normalization part. So what you do is you come to this Effects tab right here, and we scroll down to the very bottom. They've hidden it quite nicely here at the bottom. It is called loudness normalization. You can put a check in the checkbox to turn it on, or if you don't want to apply any sort of loudness normalization, just leave it unchecked. Of course, we were going to want to do that. Now, where you are publishing your video makes a difference in terms of how you want to loudness normalize it. So, for example, if you were producing a piece that was going to be a commercial shown on broadcast TV, the station that you're submitting it to would actually have some sort of requirement, some sort of loudness requirement. And if you're in Europe, it would be the EBU R128 standard. And you can see here, if I choose that, the target loudness is -23 LUFS. There's an ATSC standard here, which is typically used in the United States. I believe that's the right one. I typically almost always use this ITU-BS 1770-3. This gives you a little bit more latitude. So again, if you're going to TV and you're in Europe, you're going to want to use that. Typically in the US, you'll use that. Again, the station that you're submitting it to will tell you. But if you're going to web, you could use something like this here. And typically for web, for a stereo output, I'm going to aim for about -16. We'll be a little bit more conservative here. We'll go -16.5 LUFS today. So this is the loudness units full scale. This is where we want to target. Whoops. Don't go -6. That would be way too loud. So we'll go ahead and choose -16 LUFS. Tolerance actually tells Premiere here, when it's doing the export, hey, how much leeway do you have to go above or below the target? And typically I like to put that at 1 loudness unit, 1 LU. And what that means is that in practical terms, when this is all done, when it's exported the audio and the video, this should hit the audio at -16 LUFS, but it could be as low as -15 LUFS, or it could be sorry, as high as minus 15 LUFS or as low as minus 17 LUFS. So you're just giving a little leeway there. In terms of the max true peak level, again, for web, I typically just aim for minus 1.5. Whoops. Minus 1.5. There we go. And that usually gets the job done. What this ensures is that this ensures you won't have any clipping once the video and the audio have been compressed down into the final distribution file, whether that's going to be an MOV or an MP4 or whatever it's going to be. So minus 1.5 is almost always what I'm aiming for there. You can also configure this is the true peak limiter. You can also configure that. I usually am pretty happy with the default, so I just leave it there. You can also write a loudness report, which will just give you a little XML file that will tell you the final results of the export in terms of how loud the audio is. Not necessary, but it's there if you'd like it. And then, of course, if you do write the report, you can specify where you want it to go. So, all right. So I think with that, we are all set here. Let me just check things here. I think we're pretty good here. I'm going to go ahead and queue this. And you know what? I didn't specify where I wanted it to go. And I need to get rid of, in my practice sessions, I need to get rid of these here. Let's remove that one. And remove this one. Okay, we'll go ahead and, here I can actually specify where I want it to go. So let's go to backup to test export. We're going to call it 01 intro. All right, we'll get that going. Let me just check in here and make sure we're all good. I think we're all good here. All right. We are exporting right now. This should be done in just a few seconds here. It goes pretty quickly. So in addition, of course, to actually encoding the video, it's also taking the audio, loudness normalizing it to minus 16 LUFS, which again is a great target for when you produce something online, because here's the thing with online video and on music and whatever else it may be, a lot of times these days people are consuming that or watching that on a mobile device, and mobile devices are often used in places that are not the best acoustical environments. By that I mean, for example, people listen on the train while they're commuting, they listen on an airplane while they're flying somewhere, they listen in the car. There are all these different environments that are not ideal for listening to audio. And the mobile devices tend to have amplifiers that are they're consumer grade. So they're and you don't want to have to crank the audio up too loud, the volume up too loud, because you just don't, you want to be kind to your ears. So that's why loudness normalizing is so helpful, is because it helps make the audio, or the dialogue in particular, very present and very audible, very easy to listen to, and very easy to understand. So those are some of the benefits. Okay, looks like our export is done here. Let's go take a look here and find that file. Go to our video backup, test export. Here it is. I'm going to open this in Audition just so we can look at it. We can't listen to it again on the Hangout, but we can look at it and see how it looks in terms of its waveform. All right, come back over here, over here, over here. Okay. All right, looks really, really good. And in fact, if I run the amplitude statistics here, we hit minus 16.59 LUFS. That's fantastic for a true peak amplitude, minus 1.45 true peak, and minus 1.48 true peak. So that's our left and right channels. That's all very, very good. So looks like we got exactly what we needed here. One thing I didn't demonstrate here, and I think it's probably worth going back and looking, if I didn't do this whole thing where I pulled the audio down, let's just get rid of this here. Let me just bring in my audio again. Bear with me while I show you in real time what it's like to to edit with me. Again, what I would do here is come here. I want to get this keyframe on the downbeat, the fade in keyframe, another fade, and then all the way back at the start. Pull this one down to minus infinity. pull this one down to about minus 40-ish. Fade this one up. Let's go do the other thing. Same thing on the other side here. Keyframe. Drop another keyframe. Here's our fade keyframe. We'll go ahead and cut the music right there. No need to have that keep going. Come back. You can see oh, well, there we go. Okay, so we will drop a final keyframe right there. Fade that one all the way out to infinity. This one to minus 40-ish. And then fade this one in. Okay, so if we do not, and this is important to understand because this new loudness normalization feature in Premiere does not automate everything for you. So if you haven't done the mix here, again, where we pulled these different levels down and sort of got them so they matched up with the volume or the overall loudness of the dialogue audio, if I were just to go to export this, watch what happens. Yeah, file, export media. Go back to the effects. Just make sure we're using all the same settings. Minus 16 LUFS, 1 loudness unit tolerance, minus 1.5 dB true peak. Let's call this one intro. Take 2. That is all done, so we can remove that and run that. Okay, we are exporting that one now. That'll take a few moments here. Yeah. Now, just for the record, just this technique, pretty much what I'm showing you here in Premiere, is a result of a question that I get a lot, and that is, do I really have to edit all my audio in Audition? Can't I just do it in Premiere, or can't I just do it in Final Cut Pro 10, or whatever editor you're using? Well, the answer is yes, you can, but if you really want to kind of process your audio a little bit more carefully, get in there and really, really optimize it and make the very best of it, you probably need to go out to Audition instead, or some other audio editing app. You can't just pull that off in Premiere. So that's my answer. But I'm showing you here, there are some things you can do, and especially if you're needing to do a very quick turnaround, there are some feasible things you can do that are not ideal, but not necessarily. There are options. It's an option, definitely. So there you go. So here's our new file, opening this in Audition. See, here's the problem we have. So if I come to Amplitude Statistics, and let's just measure this file. Great news. Our loudness is at minus 16.76. That's great. That's, close enough to my target. Same with the true peak, minus 1.41, minus 1.44. All good. However, if we look at this, and especially if I could play it for you, you can see the dialogue is still really quiet relative to the music. So as soon as this music comes in, again, it's overwhelming. It's way too loud for the rest of the piece. So what I'm just trying to illustrate here is that this loudness normalization feature within Premiere Pro doesn't do the mixing for you. You still have to get the levels of the different clips within your video sort of in the same ballpark before you use this loudness normalization feature. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. However, if you do that, you can see that you can get rather nice results. Here's the example after we did kind of match the two of them up before doing the export. And you can see here the dialogue is very much in line with the audio. So it sounds natural. The transition from the dialogue to the music and back to the dialogue sounds pretty natural, and it's not overwhelming, and nobody needs to go diving for their volume control on their playback device, whatever that may be, to kind of save their ears. So be kind to your listeners and your viewers, and I think they'll be much kinder to you as well. They'll get a lot more out of the programming that you develop and the videos that you put together. So there were some thoughts there on using Premiere Pro in managing or working with audio in Premiere Pro. So I just wanted to kind of run through some of those things because, again, I've had that question a lot of times, and I think it's a great question. The unfortunate answer and the unfortunate reality is that it's probably not something you want to do for the pieces that you really care about and really want to get the top quality out of. However, if you have a quick turnaround or it's just not something you're quite as invested in, by all means, edit in Premiere Pro in terms of your audio. So I hope that was helpful for you. If you do have any questions, go ahead and leave those over here on the Google Plus page. And I'd love to see your thoughts and any questions you have. We'll do another session next week as well. I am in the thick of, I'm just sort of getting started. It hasn't gone as quickly as I'd hoped, but I am working on an audio post-processing course that will complement the production audio course that we already have over at learnlightandsound.com. And I was hoping to get that out by the end of the year. I will be entirely honest with you. I don't think that's going to happen. There's too much to do still. And, of course, we have all the holidays and all of the family activities going on. So I'm diligently working on it. It won't be here by the end of the year, but hopefully sometime by the end of January, we'll have it out and available for you as well. So again, thanks for those of you that attended today, and thanks to those of you who watched the video later on, and we will talk to you again soon.